Have you ever made a plan, felt excited, and then 2 weeks later, the momentum fizzled out? Maybe you thought it was about willpower, you needed more discipline. But what if it's really about how you're framing consistency? In today's episode of Plan Go Plan, we're going to talk about research backed, ritual centered ways of thinking about consistency that feels more human, more doable than the grind advice out there. So, if you need some consistency in your life, let's do this. Hi, y'all. I'm Dr. Danielle McGeough. I'm a professor, a mom, a recovering overachiever, a ritual nerd, and I'm so excited that today we are going to be getting into consistency. How do you set that goal and then actually follow through consistently? So recently I decided to challenge myself a little bit physically. I have been exercising at home in my basement. We have an awesome basement gym. And I've been doing that and lifting weight for quite some time now. And I've worked on increasing my steps and doing some other things like that. But I felt like I needed something to really help me with my mobility, something that would also just maybe switch things up a little. And so I joined Hot Works, which is this gym. I think it's all over the US. And there are these individual little saunas that have infrared heat. And you go in and you can kind of do your workout in them. And so I am working right now on developing the habit of consistency where now I'm having to actually go somewhere. I have to work around a schedule just a little bit, and I have to wear publicly appropriate clothes and all of that stuff. And so I've been working a little bit on consistency, and I thought that as I was doing that I would share with you all some of the things that have really helped me as I am working on this like new habit, new goal, and consistency around it. So this isn't going to come to a surprise to you if you've been listening, but I really like to think about consistency as identity. So in my field of study, performance studies, we have this concept of performativity, and it is a very behavioral based notion of what creates our identity. And in a nutshell, it's just this idea that when we repeat actions over time, that we repeat them, that they are creating something. That repetition is making something. And that we start to attach those repetitions with meaning. So when we cross our legs and we associate crossing legs with femininity over time, crossing your legs becomes a feminine gesture. There's other theories like Bandura talks about self-efficacy, which you'll hear me talking about a lot, which is our belief in our ability to succeed. And it's a strong predictor for follow through and motivation and even skill. So when we think about consistency helps us build self-efficacy. It helps us every time we get one of those repetitions in, we become more and more the sort of person that does the thing. And so really thinking about consistency as being identity work instead of just about doing the thing can help you go, how do I show up as a person that I want to become? And I want to become the sort of person that is buttery into my 60s and 70s and 80s. And if I'm going to do them, then that means I need to have practices that encourage flexibility, that butteriness. I don't know. You all are gems for listening to me. It's really important that we reframe consistency as not just about grit, it's about identity. So when you see yourself as this kind of person who returns to what matters, and that's your goals, then consistency becomes self-expression, not self-punishment. The next thing that I want to share with you is the difference between rituals and routine. Rituals help transform us from one state to another. Routines are going to help us do an action over and over and over again, but might eventually ask us to do that unconsciously. And we're oftentimes drawn to the idea of it being unconscious because that seems really flippin' easy. The issue is that it can also detach it from its meaning. It can be dissociative. So I'm a huge fan of Victor Turner's work. He has a book that he wrote in the 1960s called The Ritual Process, and he really showed how rituals transform ordinary actions into meaning-making practices that signal identity and belonging. So, if habits are mechanical, rituals are meaningful. You can do this really simply by, creating a handshake to say goodbye So what's been really helpful for me as I've been creating this ritual of going to hot works and getting in a flipping hot sauna and exercising, sometimes just laying there, if I'm going to be real about it. The thing that has been so helpful is a couple of things. One, I have given myself permission. I bought this lovely spray that I get to spray in there. It's an essential oil and it's tea tree and melon, I think. And it smells so good. And I know that if I go into there, I get to just relax and sweat and smell this amazing tea tree oil. So I have paired it with something that, reminds me that this isn't just exercise. This is me time. This is self-care, and it smells like self-care. Also, like thinking about my workout as a ritual is just way more cozy. All right. The next thing that I want you to think about is consistency is rhythm, not rigidity. All right, so Daniel Pink has this book called Win, and it's all about the timing of things. And he cites all of these, it's called chronobiology studies. And it's about humans, our circadian rhythm. And what it argues is that humans are actually not built for linear productivity, that we work best in waves of focus, energy, and recovery. And so consistency isn't always about doing the same thing with the same intensity every single day, but rather returning to rhythms. So I think of it maybe like the tide. You come back, but some days look different than others. The tide might be high on some days, it might be low on others days, it might be really rough, and other times it's really gentle. And so I really like to think about consistency as more of a wave than something that is done with equal amounts of intensity on every single day. The other thing is that consistency is a form of data collection. When we are consistent, we are able to then find patterns in our own behavior. And behavioral economics really shows that we mispredict what we'll want to do in the future, and we overestimate willpower. We tend to predict that our future self is going to be way more rested and clear-minded and able than our current self is. But, when we treat consistency as something that isn't just about doing, it's about noticing. It's about paying attention to how do I feel today? And by the way, there's a good chance I'm going to feel the same way next Friday afternoon. So think about every attempt as a way to just pay attention. I love. Mary Oliver has a poem and in the front of my mind because I use it on my creativity, storytelling, and identity syllabus. And it's 3 lines. The poem's called Instructions for Living by Mary Oliver. And it's 3 lines. It's pay attention, be astounded, tell about it. And I like that consistency is just an opportunity for us to pay attention, to be astounded by all the nuances of an experience. And then, tell me about it. Send me an email, something like that. Tell me about it. I want to hear about it. Share it with others. Which, by the way, I want you to know that if you are someone that is feeling really stuck, you're like, Danielle, consistency is really challenging for me. I do have something called a stuck assessment. It looks at your stuck styles of self-leadership. It will help you recognize and pay attention to your own patterns. It will give you a personalized ritual for your particular stuck pattern. And these results are absolutely personalized to your quiz. So it does take me sometimes a day or two to get the results back to you because it doesn't just do it automatically. I like to look through the results, and it is going to give you a personalized ritual that will help you get unstuck. I also created this quiz using transcript from hours and hours and hours with clients. And from there, that's how I determine these 6 styles of stuck, and as well as developed rituals that would be uniquely formed for each of those stuck styles. So y'all, this is absolutely free. Go take it. I'll put it in the show notes. The final thing that I want to talk about is the floor in your future self. So in Ben Hardy's book, 10x is easier than 2x, and he talks about this again in his new book, The Science of Scaling. He talks about raising your floor. Creating a minimum standard that you do not fall below. So consistency doesn't have to mean 100%. It means knowing your floor and the smallest ritual that keeps the thread alive while aiming for your future self vision. So one of the things that I really like is Laura Vanderkam has this book. I think that this is in her Tuesdays book. So Laura Vanderkam talks about this, and I really love it. She says that consistency might mean 3 days a week. What I will say is when I'm starting a new habit, I actually have to do it a lot. I find that when I'm trying to build a habit, when I'm trying to create consistent action, so I find that when I'm trying to create consistent action, it actually helps me to do it even more than what my standard is. And the reason for that is I find, for example, with exercise, when I'm first starting to do it, I will try to do that almost every single day. Again, I'll lower the intensity on certain days because my body needs some rest. But having that regular consistency at the start really, really does help me, that then I can say, okay, now the standard is actually just 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. But I've already built in that practice of knowing that I could do it every single day. I always say that I can take about 2 days off in a row, but if I were to take 3 days off in a row, it feels like I've reset and that I'm going to have to rebuild it. And so kind of know what that is for you. You might find that with different sorts of behaviors, you need to be more regular at first before you can kind of decide what the floor is, your standard is. So just pay attention to that, because I do think that it's different for different behaviors, and I think it's different for different people. But I know that personally for me, I found that when I'm first starting something, I actually need to do it more than what my standard's going to be to just kind of lock it in place. And then I can kind of find the sweet spot for me. The final thing that I want to reiterate is that consistency can be a communal practice. We don't have to do this alone. There's all sorts of research, especially around self-determination theory, that talks about relatedness as being a core driver of motivation. We are more likely to follow through when we feel connected. That's why some people do a lot better if they're going to a group exercise class than exercising in their basement. When consistency is shared with accountability partners, family rituals, you are more likely to be consistent with it. Which is why I want to share with you all that September 26, 2025, from noon until 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'm going to be holding probably the final Plan Goal Plan retreat of the year. Until I do end of the year things, this is going to be my final one probably. And I want to invite you to come plan out the rest of your year in community with others. Have that support. What I find so often doing this work is that people want to do it. They like the idea of it, but actually implementing it can be really hard. So if they can commit and say, you know what, I'm going to learn all the things, I'm going to set all the foundations in this 4-hour period, and then from there, I'm going to get some emails where Danielle's checking in with me. Or if you do one of the higher levels, I have monthly workshops twice a month. I'm doing from now until the end of the year. And that sort of check-in with other people provides the accountability, the motivation, and just the space, the container to do the work. So treat yourself, give yourself that space, make September the new January. Let's be consistent together. And as a recap, we want to treat identity over willpower, rituals over routine, rhythm over rigidity, data collection over perfection. And we're going to look at our floor and connect it to our future self. And finally, this is a communal practice. So as we leave today, where can you reframe consistency? Not as punishment, not as pressure, but as a ritual that reveals who you're becoming. I'd love to read your stuck assessments. I'd love to see you at the September retreat. Until next time, I wish for you a consistent, beautiful, gentle week. Be bold, be balanced, and be well, friends.